video, I am going to be talking about how we can recognize perpendicular lines. So first we're going to need a definition of what I mean by perpendicular. So two straight lines are perpendicular to each other if they intersect at a right angle. So as an example of what I mean by this, here we have got two perpendicular lines. I can tell that these two are perpendicular to each other because they cross at a right angle. So if I look at the angle between these two lines here, I would find that that was 90 degrees. Whereas on the other side here, we've got a load of lines that are not perpendicular to each other, because all of these are different angles. If you look at all their intersections, they are all different angles. Okay, so that's what we mean by a perpendicular line. Now, it's useful to have this picture in our heads, but when we're looking at equations, there is also another way that we can work out whether two lines are perpendicular. Two lines are perpendicular to each other if their gradients are negative reciprocals. So as a reminder, negative, you should know what negative means, but a reciprocal is just 1 over that number. So the reciprocal of 5 is 1 over 5, the reciprocal of 10 is 1 over 10, the reciprocal of 3/5 is 5 over 3. So the negative reciprocal is then the negative version of that 1 over. So the negative reciprocal of 5 is negative 1 over 5. The negative reciprocal of 10 is negative 1 over 10. The negative reciprocal of 3/5 is negative 5 over 3. So what that means algebraically is if I've got one gradient, I know the gradient of one of my lines is m, then the gradient of the other line must be negative 1 over m if these two are perpendicular lines. So there's some examples. Y equals 2x and y equals negative a half x are perpendicular lines because 2 is the negative reciprocal of negative a half. Similarly, as I say, it's a two-way relationship, so negative a half and 2 are negative reciprocals of each other, so that still holds. Now this one often throws some people off because, well, the reciprocal of a half is 2, so the negative reciprocal of a half is negative 2. So you can see how I've just made the other one negative, but this is still true. So these two are perpendicular to each other. And then just as a reminder that this is entirely focused on the gradient, which means that whatever the y-intercept is, it doesn't matter. So we're only looking at the number in front of the x. The y-intercept doesn't change whether something's perpendicular. Okay, so here's some examples of lines that are not perpendicular to each other. So these two here are parallel lines because they have the same gradient. They are not perpendicular, they are parallel. These two here is again a very common mistake. These are reciprocal gradients, not negative reciprocal. So these would not be perpendicular lines. Now here we've got a 2 that's changed into a 0.2. That's a common mistake. 0.2 is not the reciprocal of 2. A half is the reciprocal of 2. 1 over 2 is the reciprocal of 2. And then finally, people seem to be tempted to put the x in the denominator of the fraction, but that's not what we're doing here. The x is still in the same place because it's still in the form y equals mx plus c. This would be what we call a completely different graph. So we're not going to be focusing on this for now. Okay, so the key points from this video. Two lines are perpendicular if they intersect at a right angle. Two lines are perpendicular if their gradients are negative reciprocals.